Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Vanthi Thangbing from the University of Language and International Studies, Hanoi National University. It is my honor to be here today and present to you the result of an action research titled Boosting Students' Autonomy in EFL Literature Classes. Please allow me to begin my presentation. I have been a teacher of literature, teaching the subject to the students who are specialized in the English language, who are supposed to become translators, interpreters, and teachers of English in the future after they graduate. And I have been doing the subject for more than 20 years. And I have been experiencing and witnessing many lessons in which the teacher was the only person who talks. And the teacher usually lectures on how certain literary works can be interpreted. And the student just take notes without reflecting on their own attitude towards the content being presented, let alone to voice up their own interpretation. Sometimes the teacher may ask a question and the few students who are made to talk do it with little eagerness and confidence. And of course, almost all of the students accept the knowledge presented without questioning how much they resonate with that. To express it briefly, the students' confidence and autonomy are not high. I have asked myself, what is wrong with the approach of literature, with the approach to literature as a subject in my institution? Maybe the choice of the literary works that we have made for our course, may it be the way we view our students and ourselves, may it be the method that we are using. The techniques that I'm going to present to you here are the attempts of myself and my colleagues in the literature group to boost the students' confidence and autonomy during our EFL literature classes. Let me begin with the assumption. The students may be inconfident if they believe that no matter how much they try, they will never come to a profound or a correct interpretation of the literary work. And if they voice up to share their views, it is very likely that other students will find them wrong or poor or bad. This lack of confidence will lead them to wait for the teacher to provide them with an interpretation that they will note down on the notebook and then reproduce it into their own essay in the final exam. Surviving the test is their purpose. So reflecting on their own responses to the literary work, appreciating the literary work from their own viewpoint in their own way, and voicing up that interpretation to make contribution to the artistic conversation between them as the readers and the writer is never their intention. The threats that the students are likely to face when doing the course of literature are, as you can see on the screen, number one, an experience of failure. They think that they will fail to interpret the work, and literature is generally above their head. This can be an experience that they had with literature during their school time, secondary school and high school, etc. And now when they come to the university doing literature in a foreign language, that experience come back to them, and they feel that they will not be able to understand and appreciate literature of a country that they have little knowledge or have never been to. And number two is a feeling of inferiority to their peers. They are afraid of being judged by their classmates. And number three is the fear of criticism. This has a lot to do with the threat number two, because they are afraid that the classmates may view them as low, as poor, as bad, and they are very afraid of hearing those criticism. As the teacher, I want to make my students build up the confidence in themselves. I want to engage them in the knowledge construction process in the lesson time, and I want them to take charge of their own academic development, which means I need to eliminate all these threats so that they can build up their own confidence and autonomy. The techniques that I tried is to use gifts and showed an open attitude to encourage the students. Number one, to look into themselves for their initial interpretation of the literary work. Number two, read and reread the work, focusing on significant details for precise comprehension of the surface text, and then profound interpretation of their own, rather than waiting for the teacher's lecture. Here are the 4 particular steps that I have gone through with my students in one particular lesson. Step 1, which lasts for about 10 minutes. I require the students to spend 10 minutes to free write about their first response, what they were impressed with, what the likes, the dislike, their appreciation, their confusion, etc. In other words, I want the students to look inward into their soul, into their heart, and into their mind to understand how they respond to the literary work. And this is something that the student do not have the chance to do when they are at the high school or the secondary school. And during the first few lessons, I had to spend a lot of time giving instructions and encouraging. However, as the time goes by, by the 4th or the 5th lesson, some students begin to reveal that they enjoy this activity. The step number 2 is group discussion. I want the students to talk with the people sitting next to them first about their initial response to the work, and then they can move to other groups and talk with as many classmates as possible to find those who share their first response or share their confusion or their likes and dislikes, etc. And the more people who share with their view, the more likely it is that they will get the gifts. The gifts can be the sweets or some small lipsticks or a CD or something. The purpose of this discussion is I want the students to practice using English to express themselves, so that they can feel solidified by their classmates, and through that solidification they can build up their confidence. And when they do it with the manner of like a competition, like a game, they may feel more motivated. So the gifts are just the means to facilitate and to boost their motivation during this activity. In step number 3, I organize class discussions. I encourage the students to report to the whole class the response, the appreciation, the likes and dislikes of their group, and give the justification and explanation. They talk on behalf of the whole group that share their view, and they talk on behalf of themselves. And then I require the whole class to vote for the best speaker. The criteria to choose the best speaker is not the speaker with the correct interpretation, but we choose the speaker with the most specific or peculiar or original interpretation for the speaker who are themselves and who are similar to nobody else. And the criteria, the other criteria is how that speaker can convince the listeners, the audience, that they are right. That means for the sound justification. So it is not the vote for right or wrong, for good or bad, but it is the vote for being themselves and being confident. And of course, the winner will get a gift. So to add the note of fun to this class discussion, the gifts are just facilitators. In step number 4, I require the students to read and reread the literary work, and then they can continue to discuss. This time, with reading the work again, they may begin to recognize that they have misunderstood some key incidents, or they may recognize a deeper interpretation for an incident, for a sentence, for a word, etc. And in the fourth stage, I encourage the students to work on their own rather than to discuss. This time, once again, I want them to look at the literary work and look inward into themselves. And then I would try to refrain from giving the judgments of something is poor, something is wrong, and I would refrain from lecturing. I would give guiding statements, and I would make the questions that elicit more arguments from students when they present their final interpretation to the whole class. And following the results of the intervention that I have done to my literature classes, many of the students confidently discuss about with the class and with friends about their confusion, about their misunderstanding, and almost all were eager to talk with their classmates. And by the end of the lesson, that I organized the survey, 95% of the students said that their first interpretation was shallow, so they decided to change it. 80% of the students said that because of their reading and their own discussion, they came to a change in their interpretation, not because of the teacher's lecture. 20% of the students acknowledged the failure to interpret and appreciate at the first reading. And 5% of the students did not change their interpretation, but they gave very strong justification for their refusal to do that. I see that the students generally develop more autonomy and stronger confidence when they see themselves as the person who make decisions on how and which interpretation they would adopt for the literary work. And the change in the interpretation is the result of their own effort in cooperation with their friends, rather than being helped by the teacher. I'm very pleased that the students see themselves as the center of the arena, as the center of the learning process. And if you look at the results here, you will see that the teacher is no more the person who provides the knowledge as traditionally usually seen. And the other desirable result is that the students' level of self-awareness also increase. You see, the student begin to look inward into themselves. They begin to notice something remarkable, something special about themselves, and they are encouraged to treasure and to appreciate those ideas and emotions and interpretation. And, you know, when they are confident enough to realize their drawback and acknowledge the drawback and take action to change that drawback and make it develop into their strength, I think it requires a lot of confidence. So self-awareness um, must go hand in hand with confidence. Without self-awareness, confidence in the students would be something unreliable. So self-awareness is also improved with this. So our conclusion for this is that by creating a safe environment with no judgment of right or wrong, with appreciation, the students build up their confidence and build up their autonomy. They trust themselves more. They appreciate themselves more, and they take charge of their academic development. You know, they appreciate their starting point, they appreciate their peculiarity, their personality, background knowledge and experience, and they make their own decision about which interpretation would resonate with them, would suit them, and they are confident enough to raise up that interpretation. And even if they refuse to change and they just keep their first interpretation, they give a justification for that. So the student becomes the center of their own learning process. That means they take autonomy, they develop good autonomy. So the results of, all these good results come from the feeling of being safe in a learning environment where the teachers and their peers are appreciative and open towards them. Um, the, um, the drawback of this approach, I think, is that instead of finding myself as the center of the teaching process, finding myself being admired and appreciated as the knowledge provider in the eyes of the students, I make themselves, I put myself off the spotlight. I turn myself into an activity organizer and facilitator rather than the knowledge provider. There must be a new approach to my own job satisfaction. You know, I need to look for satisfaction in the confidence and autonomy that I build up in my students, rather than in the students' admiration of me as a teacher. And I am open to your questions and comments, because I know that there are drawbacks in the research in terms of purpose, in terms of method, and also in my discussion. I am very happy to receive your questions, and I will find it honorable answering your questions. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your attention. And now it's time for you to raise the questions. And thank you again.